When Al is on the piano, you already know that it's a classic. Go subscribe. Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Knowledge. Welcome to Brews and Reviews. And today I'm reviewing Boldy James and the Alchemist Bo Jackson. And I am sipping on a Miracle Wheat from Hop and Sting Brewery in Grapevine, Texas. This is a 5.5% orange wheat beer, very experimental, just like these beats, and it's got a little baseball theme in the cover to go with this album, Bo Jackson. Let's get into it. Boldy James and the Alchemist, a great collaboration, back again for the third time. Yes, third. Don't forget my first chemistry set all the way back in 2013. That was their first collaborative project, but of course, in most people's consciousness is last year's The Price of Tea in China, which began a really strong run for the year 2020 for both of these artists. Alchemist in particular, I gave Producer of the Year in 2020, Price of Tea in China being one of the many reasons. And he's making another strong case this year to get a second consecutive Producer of the Year because he's got this thing of ours and what's on many people's top 10 list this year, the album with Billy Woods and Elucid, Haram. The album kicks off with double hockey sticks. The beat is dark, ominous, and largely drumless, and the darkness definitely matches the flow. Boldy setting the scene. He says, "Ice wires, diamonds cutting up like I'm Mike Myers. Gotta shoot it up in front of me, the first time buyers." Interesting that he mentions Dungeon Family in this verse as well as Outkast at the beginning. And I don't think there's any real affiliation here. I think he's mostly being symbolic. And that's just the first part of this track. We get a beat switch that completely changes the tempo and style, but somehow still fits in as one track. And I gotta say, right from the jump, I love Boldy's flow and rhymes on this, but I'm still waiting for this instrumental because I'm just getting lost in these beats. We also get a little enlightenment about the title of this project at the end. Bo Jackson, of course, I think it kind of fits with the name Boldy James, so it probably is an actual alias for him, but at the same time, Bo Jackson was a real person who played both professional football and baseball. Nobody could even do that in this day and age. A few people did it back in the day, but Bo Jackson did both very well. He was a Pro Bowler and an All-Star at the same time. So I think this is a metaphor for Boldy James being able to do anything, being versatile, and also maybe having his career in the drug game and his career in the rap game. Turpentine, one of many incredible beats. We've got a chipmunk sample and probably one of the dopest bass lines I've heard all year for Boldy to sing his rhymes about slanging over. Brick Mile to Montana. What the fuck is this beat? Alchemist is just getting more and more experimental as he ages, and somehow he's getting more and more fans as he does it and just does this crazy off-kilter stuff. Benny the Butcher coming in, switching up his flow, spitting really nice on this. Boldy doing the same type of flow, and anyone who says that Boldy's flow is boring really needs to listen closely to this track and this album as a whole. I think he switches it up a lot more on this than he's done on previous projects. EPMD. Seems like I've heard a track like that recently with that same kind of title. Let me know in the comments, did Eminem murder Boldy James on this beat? Let me know. Now, it's kind of weird that they would keep this title given the high-profile nature of the Nas and Eminem track that just dropped. But still, though, EPMD, the group, cannot get enough love. check them out. One of the greatest from the 80s. And Eric Sermon was a super producer going forward. Also, check out my review of King's Disease 2. But regardless of that album, the title of this track is relevant to Boldy 2. As he name drops EPMD's first album, he says, when them city slickers beating on your block, the shit is strictly business. EPMD, everybody plotting my demise. I marvel at the sight of Kane, I love to watch it rise. The bitch was love at first sight when we was locking eyes. Steel Wool, one of the more up-tempo beats, and I really like how Boldy changes the pronunciation of Cherokee to rhyme with karaoke, cherokee. I don't even remember now how he does it because it's so different. But this proves that there's a lot of subtlety in Boldy's rhymes. And maybe that's why some people say that he's boring. They're just not listening closely enough to pick up on the subtlety. And the silencing of the lambs and Little Bo Peep line is another example of that. Photographic Memories. Oh my God, this track. This may be my favorite off the album. And with this, is it safe to say at this point in the album that this is even better than The Price of Tea in China? This beat is insane. And for a producer like Alchemist, I know he's been doing the drumless stuff for a while, at least as long as he's been working with Griselda. But for somebody who earlier in their career were known for their hard drums, to be able to rock it like this, drumless, is amazing. Earl Sweatshirt coming through with his second great verse on an Alchemist project this year, right after Nobles, but it's really Marcy that steals the show on this. Quite possibly, really, if we're gonna be honest, the best verse on the album. And he says, broke generational curses with my cursive. I understand the game and I know all of the inner workings. The pain run deep, you only see what it is on the surface. My bitch in the squeaky clean, bet the work was sitting in her cervix. Speed Trap. This has some really low bass that your shitty speakers are not gonna pick up. Listen to this on some real speakers to really catch everything that Alchemist is giving us on this track. Diamond Dallas, another standout. A little disappointed we're not getting a Stove God Cooks verse on this, but he's doing all he needs to do by singing this chorus. He's kind of on a blues tip, and when Al is on the piano, you already know that it's a classic. There's really no place for a Stove God verse because Boldy's going 32 bars and he actually keeps the same rhyme through most of those. Flight Risk, and we are blessed with another piano beat from Al. And I thought that this was Freddie Gibbs for a moment. Boldy's flow is so similar on this that when I was just casually listening this morning when it dropped, I had to go back and check the track list just to make sure that this wasn't Freddie. Illegal Search and Seizure, Alchemist with a soul sample, and there's so many different styles on the production of this project. I don't know too many producers who could really pull this off, much less have the skill to do it in the first place. But Alchemist is keeping us on our toes with so many different styles of beats that all kind of still fit in the same theme. And I gotta tell you, as I was listening to these samples of the actual Bo Jackson at the end of this track, I was just kind of staring at the album cover, and all of a sudden I realized they got his Kansas City Royals baseball cards and Raiders football cards mixed all into this cover. I didn't even notice that to begin with, but now it really stands out. Fake Flowers, another standout, and we got some of Alchemist's most frequent collaborators of late on this joint because we got Boldy, of course, and we got the Fetty crew, Freddie Gibbs and Currency. And this is not something that you'll hear me say a lot, but Currency kills his flow on this track. He says, Them fools ain't like me, already dead ahead of my time. They analyze my lines, years later realize my state of mind. Gibbs, never a slouch and never to be outdone on any track that he's featured on. Really owns the track by himself. Too many lines to quote on his verse, but here's one. He says, "Doghouse, crack house, Molly and X house. Michael Jackson ain't dead, he live in my guest house." And he even gets a little personal on this, talking about his recent adventure of being in prison in France. Third person, this beat kind of reminds me of SE Gang off of Conway's last joint that featured Benny and Westside Gunn. I actually had to go back and look at that to see if it was Alchemist, but that's actually a Derringer beat. Either way, very similar sound here. And thinking about the title of this track and the chorus together, where Boldy says, "My daughter and my son need me, so I can't desert them. How many times you think you can get away with murder?" You realize that he's really speaking in the third person. He's asking himself that question. First 48 Freestyle. This was one of the first releases off the project, and I'm actually glad that they saved this one for the end because this is a little more straightforward, not as experimental as the rest of the album, and we needed to hear that out there shit first before we got into something more straightforward. And we got Boldy with some cold bars on this. He says, "So I brought these 2 9s with me out on a double date. Been bit a few times, the reason I can never trust a snake. Ain't on shit, found his whereabouts, he took the bait. Told him make a wish, blew his candles out, then cut the cake." Drug Zone, and we've gone from no drums at times to crazy off-kilter drum patterns like this that nobody but the mind of Alchemist could think of. Crazy production throughout this whole LP. A casual hip-hop fan should know that it is incredibly hard to flow over off-time drums, and Boldy does it very well here. And when people say that Boldy's flow is boring, it's just because he's so adaptable and he can enmesh himself so well into any beat. In the end, this comes out much like their last collaborative project, The Price of Tea in China, because it's a standout for the year. Some of these tracks I think are even better than tracks on that project, and I'm really just getting lost in these Alchemist beats. Boldy is artistic and hits us with schemes and complexity that you really have to pay attention to get. At the same time, I do wish that his subject matter was a little more diverse, and that's the only thing that's holding this just a little bit outside of the top 10 for the year. Just like The Price of Tea in China was probably an 11 or 12 for 2020, but this is definitely worth spinning again and again. And hey, when 500 projects drop in a year, there's nothing wrong with number 11. I'm gonna give this an 8 out of a 12 pack. Thank you for watching my review of Boldy James and the Alchemist, Bo Jackson. If you like this, go ahead and hit like now and hit me up in the comments. If you didn't like it, also let me know why in the comments. I drop hip hop and hops related content consistently, so until I see you next time, keep buzzing.
But if he's on his channel saying that somebody's album is better than mine, unsubscribe to that motherfucker.
No, your album's the best, man.
There you go. Subscribe.
Yeah.
Subscribe.